So 1.1 and 1.2. So this is kind of a review of Algebra 2, kind of geometry. We're going to talk about slope, distance, and midpoint, and equations of a line. So these three formulas you have to know. The slope is the change in y's over the change in x's. So y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Let's say we had 2 points. So I'm going to make up 2 points here so we can practice finding the slope, distance, and midpoint. So if we had 0, 3, and let's say 4, 1. So if I were to graph these, for the first one we stay at 0 and go up 3. Second one we go to the right 4 and up 1. This would be my line. Now when you're finding the slope, it doesn't matter which one's your first point and which one's your second point. When you're finding the slope, distance, and midpoint, it doesn't matter which one's your first point and which one's your second point, just as long as you're consistent with it. I'm going to make the first one x1 and y1, and the second point's going to be x2 and y2. Again, if you had them flipped, if you labeled your first one as x2 and y2 and the second one is x1 and y1, it doesn't matter. You'll end up with the same answer. So let's plug it in. We have the change in y's on top. So y2 minus y1 would be 1 minus 3 over x2 minus x1 would be 4 minus 0. What's 1 minus 3? Anybody? Negative 2 over 4. And what does negative 2 over 4 simplify to? Negative 1/2. So our slope is negative 1/2. Does that make sense with the line that we have? Is our slope decreasing? Yeah. How we read slope on a graph, just like how you read a sentence, is from left to right. So if I was a person and I was starting at the left side of my graph, would I be walking uphill or downhill going along this line? If I'm walking, am I walking uphill or downhill? Downhill. So my slope would be decreasing, which makes sense because I got a negative slope. Now there's 4 types of slopes that we can have. I'm going to draw 4 graphs so we can see them. So the first one's going to be decreasing, which we just saw. We had a line that was going down. This would be decreasing slope. Our slope would be negative. If we had a line that was going up, this would be increasing slope. So if I was a person and I was standing at the left side of my graph, walking from left to right, just like how we read going from left to right, I'd be walking uphill here. So our slope would be increasing. Now the other 2 types of slope that we could have would be if we had a line that just went straight up and down. What type of slope would we have here? Anybody remember? Here our slope would be undefined. If I was a person and I was skiing and I was standing on a mountain that went straight up and down, I'd fall off. The slope is undefined. What type of line, what type of equation do we have when the line goes straight up and down? Is it x equals or y equals here? X equals. Which intercept, the x or the y-intercept, does this red line intersect? It touches the x-intercept, so it's x equals. This line would be something like x equals -3 or -2, whatever it may be. And then the fourth type of slope is if we just had a flat horizontal line. Here, our slope would be 0. My line's a little crooked. Let me fix that. Zero. So our slope would be 0. What type of line would we have here? Would this be x equals or y equals? Y equals. It touches the y-axis. So it intersects the y-axis at, we could say y equals 2. We don't have any values here, but be something positive. So y equals 2 would be an example of the equation of this line. One way that you can remember which one's which, because people sometimes get undefined and 0 confused, is undefined. Think about like the n goes straight up and down. 0 on the z, it goes horizontal. Awesome. Let's find the distance. So we'll keep using those 2 points that we had. We'll use this as our x1, y1, and x2 and y2. So same points. Let's find the distance. So the distance is the square root of x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. Again, it doesn't matter which one's your x1 or your x2, which one's your first point, which one's your second point, as long as you're consistent with it. So we have the square root of x2 we said was 4 minus x1 is 0 squared plus y2 is 1 minus y1 is 3 squared. So when you're doing these types of questions, whether it's slope, distance, or midpoint, I would always recommend labeling which one's which. Bless you. Label which one's your for x1, y1, x2, y2. It just makes it easier. That way you can just plug it right in. You don't really have to think, oh, did I mix those up? Label which one's which, plug them in. So here we have 4 minus 0 would be 4 squared plus 1 minus 3 is -2 squared. 4 squared is 16 plus -2 squared is 4. So we have the square root of 20. We always want to simplify our square roots if we can. What are 2 factors of 20? 4 and 5. 2 factors of 4 would be 2 and 2. So we'd circle our groups of 2. So we have 2 square root 5. So this would be our distance. So always simplify. Simplify your radical. Last one, let's find the midpoint. So again, we're using the same points that we had up at the top, 0, 3, and 4, 1. So the midpoint, we find the average of the x's and the average of the y's. So add them together, divide by 2, add the y's together, divide by 2. So we have 0 plus 4. It's written x2 plus x1, but you're adding them, so it doesn't matter which order you do. So I'll keep it consistent. We have 4 plus 0 over 2, and y2 plus y1 would be 1 plus 3 over 2. So 4 over 2 and 4 over 2. What does 4 over 2 simplify to? 2. So our point would be 2, 2. This would be our midpoint. All right. On the next page, we're going to talk about equations of a line. So we're going to find the equation of a line with the given info. So there's 2 types of equations of lines that we're going to focus on. One of them is slope-intercept form. Anybody know what slope-intercept form is? Awesome. Y equals mx plus b, where m is our slope and B is our y-intercept. The other equation of a line we'll see pretty frequently is point-slope form. Point-slope form is y minus y1 is equal to m times x minus x1. So if we're given a point and a slope, we may want to use point-slope form. If we're given the slope and the y-intercept, we'd want to use slope-intercept form. The question sometimes will be specific. It'll say, it could give you the point and the slope, but ask you to leave it in slope-intercept form. So just make sure you pay attention to what the question's asking, and that'll determine how you leave your answer. But we can go from point-slope form to slope-intercept form just by simplifying our equation. So let's look at A. Yes. Yeah. So we're going to find the equation of a line with the given information. In A, it says that m is equal to 2, so our slope is 2, and it passes through -1, 7. So we're given the slope and a point. So which equation do you think we'd want to use? Point-slope form, because we're given the slope and the point. So let's plug it in. M is 2, tells us that. It passes through the point, -1, 7. So this is our x1 and y1. So we have y minus 7 is equal to 2 times x minus -1. How could I write x minus -1 a little bit nicer? X plus 1. So y minus 7 is equal to 2 times x plus 1. So this is an equation of a line. So all we had to do here is plug it in. It's just asking us for the equation of a line. This question could ask us for the equation of a line in slope-intercept form. So we may have to do more work depending on what the question asks. So if it asks for slope-intercept form, what would I need to do to put it in slope-intercept form? How do I get it to be y equals? I can move the 7 over. What else would we do? Distribute the 2. I'm going to distribute the 2 first. So we have y minus 7 is equal to 2x plus 2. Then we'd move the 7 over. Since we're subtracting 7, we want to add it to the other side. So plus 7. So y is equal to 2x plus 9. So this would be another way of writing the equation of a line. It just depends on what it asks for. This question was very vague. It doesn't ask for anything specific, so you can give me either one. But these are both correct answers for an equation of a line. If it asks for slope-intercept form, you'd want to write it in y equals mx plus b. If it asks for point-slope, you'd want to write it in point-slope form. Let's do B. So it gives us the slope and it passes through 3, -2. So we're doing the same thing here. We can start by plugging it into point-slope form. So y minus, what's our y1? -2. So I have x1 and y1. So y minus -2 would turn into y plus 2 is equal to our slope is -3 over 4 times x minus x1, so x minus 3. If this question asked for slope-intercept form, what would we need to do? So this is an equation of a line. This answers the question. That's a correct answer. But let's say it asks for slope-intercept form. What should we do? Awesome. We want to distribute -3 over 4. So y plus 2 is equal to -3 over 4 times x. How do I multiply a fraction and a whole number? Do what? I can put 3 over 1, and then we just multiply the tops together and the bottoms together. So -3 times -3 would be 9. So plus 9 over 4 times 1 would be 4. So this isn't quite in slope-intercept form yet. We need it to be y equals all by itself. So what should we do next? Subtract 2. So y is equal to negative 3 over 4x. Now we are adding a fraction and a whole number. So we want to put 2 over 1, but what do we need in order to add fractions or subtract fractions here? Common denominator. So in my second fraction, I'm going to multiply the top and the bottom by 4. So we make it 8 over 4. 9 minus 8 is 1, so plus 1 over 4. So this would be slope-intercept form. So again, these are both correct answers. They're just written in different ways. If the test or quiz said leave it in slope-intercept form, you'd have to do slope-intercept form. If it didn't specify, leave it in whatever form you want. Let's look at C. For C, what do you think would be easier, point slope form or slope-intercept form? What are we given? Are we given the slope? No. So we have to find the slope first. Then once we find the slope, it might be easier to use point slope form because we'll have a point and the slope. So let's find the slope. For our slope formula, what goes on top? Awesome, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So it always helps to label the points. We have x1, y1, x2, y2, and plug them in. So this would be 7 minus 1 over negative 8 minus negative 8. 7 minus 1 is 6. What's negative 8 minus negative 8? 0. Negative minus a negative turns into a plus. This is a negative 8 plus 8, which is 0. What happens when we get 0 in the denominator of a fraction? It's undefined. Awesome. So our answer here would be undefined. So our slope is undefined. So what type of line are we talking about here? A vertical line or horizontal line? Vertical. This question asks us for the equation of a line, so we can't just say undefined. We have a line here. It's a vertical line, so we need to come up with that equation. Let's plot these points. Maybe that'll help us come up with the equation. So negative 8, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, and negative 8, 7. So we have a vertical line going through those 2 points. Now for our equation of this line, is it x equals or y equals? X equals. How did we know it was going to be x equals? Not only because it's vertical, but how else could we tell? It touches the x-axis. So whatever axis it touches, that's what it's the variable you start with. So we have x equals, what does x equal here? Negative 8. Awesome. Not only does it go through negative 8, but looking at our points, x is equal to negative 8. So that would be our equation of a line. All right, last question. We want to write the equation of a line through the given point, parallel and perpendicular to the given line. So this is asking for 2 separate things. We got to find the equation that's parallel to this. Then we want to find the equation that is perpendicular. So 2 different questions. When we have 2 lines that are parallel, 2 lines are parallel here. 1, 2. What would we know about their slopes? They're the same. Awesome. Parallel lines have the same slope. What about perpendicular lines? What types of slope do perpendicular lines have?
Isn't it like the inverse or something?
Not the inverse.
Reciprocal?
The reciprocal, but what type of opposite reciprocal? Awesome. So the opposite reciprocal. An example of opposite reciprocals would be if I had a slope of 3/4. Opposite means that it's going to have the opposite sign, so it'd be negative, and reciprocal means that we flip the fraction, so it'd be -4/3. So if I had a slope of 3/4 and -4/3, these two lines would be perpendicular. So opposite reciprocals. All right, so the first part of this question, we want to write the equation of a line through the given point that is parallel to this line. So let's start by finding parallel. So for A. So it gives us a point. It also gives us an equation of a line. So we want to find the line that is parallel to this one. Well, we know if they're parallel, they have the same slope. So the first thing I want to do is find the slope of this line. Can I tell what the slope is when it's written as 3x plus 4y is equal to 7? No. What form would I want it to be in order to tell the slope? Y equals mx plus b. Let's get it to be y equals. Let's isolate the y. So we can subtract the 3x to move it to the other side. So 4y is equal to -3x plus 7. What would we do next? Divide by 4. So y is equal to -3/4x plus 7/4. Now here, all we care about is the slope from this line. What is our slope? -3/4. The rest of this line does not matter. All we care about is the slope. Now the line we're coming up with is parallel to this one. So the slope of the new line is going to be what? Same thing. So slope of the new line is going to be the same thing. So we have the slope of our new line, and we have a point on our new line. So what would we do to come up with the equation? If we have the slope and a point.
You could replace x and y with a point and then solve for b.
We could do that, or we could plug it into point slope form. Either way works. That way we'll get the same thing. So let's plug it into point slope form since we have the point and the slope. So y minus y1 is equal to m times x minus x1. So y minus our y is 7/8 is equal to, our slope is -3/4, x minus -2/3. So that turns into a plus 2/3. So this is an equation of a line. This answers the question. This would be a correct answer. But let's say it asked for slope-intercept form. What would we need to do to put it in slope-intercept form? Awesome. So this is point slope form. This would be a correct answer. But if it asks for slope-intercept form, we want to simplify. So we're going to distribute -3/4. When we multiply with fractions, multiply the numerators, multiply the denominators. So it'd be -6/12, which simplifies to what? 1/2. Then we want to get the y all by itself, so we're going to add 7/8 to move it to the other side. So y is equal to -3/4x. What do I need when I'm adding fractions? common denominator. So I'm going to multiply my first fraction by 4 over 4 to make it 4 over 8. So everybody see how I did that? So we have negative 4 plus 7, which would be 3 over 8. The denominator stays the same when you're adding or subtracting fractions. So this would be slope-intercept form. So these are both correct answers. They're talking about the same line, they're just written a little bit differently. Next thing we're going to do is find the slope find the equation of a line that's perpendicular to this one. So the slope of the line is negative 3 over 4. If it is perpendicular, I'm going to say slope of the perpendicular line. This upside down T means perpendicular. What is the opposite reciprocal of negative 3 over 4? Positive 4 over 3. Awesome. So we're going to do the same thing, but with our new slope. So this is part B of the question. We're going to find the line that's perpendicular to it. So we just had to find the opposite reciprocal of our slope here, which is positive 4 over 3. Any questions so far? Good here. All right, let's plug it in. So we can plug it into point slope form. So y minus y1 would be 7 over 8 is equal to m, so 4 over 3, times x minus x1, so x plus 2 over 3. This is the equation of a line. This works if it said we could leave it in point slope form. But if the question said in slope-intercept form, what would we need to do? How do we get it into y equals mx plus b? Distribute. So y minus 7 over 8 is equal to 4 over 3 times x plus, when we multiply fractions, multiply the tops and multiply the bottoms. So 8 over 9. Last up, we want to add 7 over 8 to the other side. So y is equal to 4 over 3x. What do we need if we're adding fractions? Common denominator. So let's make a common denominator here. What is a least common denominator between 9 and 8? What numbers does both 9 and 8 go into? 72. So we're going to multiply the top and the bottom here on our first fraction by 8. So this would give us 64 over 72 plus, second fraction, we have to multiply the top and the bottom by 9. So 63 over 72. 64 plus 63 is? If we add the numerators, 64 plus 63. 127 over 72. So this would be our equation in slope-intercept form. So for the last two slides, we kind of went above and beyond with giving the answers. We gave the answers in point slope form and slope-intercept form. On the homework, I think it's specific on which one it wants. Or if you put the answer in point slope form and it marks it wrong, try simplifying it to slope-intercept form and see if that's what WebAssign wants. But I'm pretty sure it's specific on which form.